they question their own sanity. However, I can assure you that what they are about to share is completely true. 7 nights, 7 encounters with the extraordinary. There's a woman who leaves the cemetery each night, a man who once served royalty and claimed to have seen eyes that weren't human, an ancient mirror that reflected more than just the present, and a mysterious entity that followed him for miles, without making a sound. With every story, the truth grows darker. In the end, you'll come to understand why some people never find peace in sleep again. Are you ready? Then come along with me.
Crow, I swear by everything sacred that what I'm about to tell you is true. Even though I'm sane, clear-headed, and mentally sound today, I still wake up in the middle of the night, afraid to hear that door creaking open again. It all started around 2 months ago. My father passed away. It was an aggressive, fast-acting cancer. Gone in less than 3 months. We laid him to rest in an old cemetery here in the interior of Minas. It was small and simple, but he loved that place. He used to say it was too peaceful even for the dead. In the first week after the funeral, my mother began to complain about strange noises at night. She said she could hear footsteps in the hallway and the front door opening around 3 a.m. I thought it was just part of her grief, purely imaginary, but I decided to stay there for a few days just to ensure she wasn't losing her grip on reality. On the second night, I heard it. It was around 3:17 a.m. The doorknob turned with a sharp click. The wood creaked typically, as if someone were entering slowly. But the strangest part was the smell, a scent of wilting flowers, damp earth, and something I can only describe as an old coffin. I slowly got out of bed, grabbed a flashlight, and made my way to the living room. There was nothing there. The door was ajar, but not locked. I started to think my mother might have left it unlocked and someone came in, but the next day, my mother called me into her room. She looked pale and was crying. She showed me an old family photo. It's her. Son, it's her who came in here last night. The photo was of my great-grandmother, buried in the same cemetery as my father, nearly 40 years ago. That following night, I prepared myself. I set up a camera in the hallway, locked up everything. I sprinkled rock salt at the entrance and said a strong prayer, but what came wasn't just a presence, it was something intentional. The camera recorded it, Crow. The footage shows at 3:14 a.m., the door opening by itself, and a white figure, female, passing in front of the camera. But the face was identical to the one in the photo, yet her eyes were completely black. I called a priest. I brought in a healer. I did everything I could, but every night, for 7 days, she returned. She would enter, walk to the room where my father used to sleep, and then disappear. Crow, I dug deeper. I went to the cemetery and requested permission to exhume my great-grandmother's body. They told me the grave had been disturbed. The coffin was empty. Since then, I've moved my mother to a new house. I burned everything, but sometimes when I sleep with the door open, I still catch a whiff of rotting flowers, and the doorknob shakes on its own at 3:17. Whether this was a warning or protection, or if something was after my father's soul, I'll never know. But one thing I'm certain of, she's still out there, Crow, and she knows that I've shared this with you. Crow, I've worked in security my whole life. 20 years in the military, then I was recruited as a private security officer. Finally, I accepted the biggest contract of my life, working as a bodyguard at diplomatic events. My last assignment, was at a closed reception abroad with members of the British royal family present, and it was there that I witnessed something I should have never seen. It was a chilly evening, full of formalities. I was positioned in the back room, observing everything, and in the center of the hall, she was there. The monarch, surrounded by aides, listening silently to two diplomats, but something was off. One of the diplomats spoke in a language I had never heard before. It wasn't French, Russian, or Arabic. It was guttural, short, paused utterances, and she responded in the same manner, as if it was something ancient, non-human. I moved in closer, pretending to adjust a security point, and it was at that moment that she turned her head in my direction, and I saw her eyes turned completely black. No, Iris, no whites, like the eyes of a reptile, but it wasn't just the color, it was the presence. In that instant, I felt that it saw me. It, not her. In the following days, I tried to report what I witnessed. I was dismissed. My access was revoked, and I started to be followed. Cameras in my car would stop recording on their own. My phone would ring in the middle of the night with static and distorted voices. One night, I found marks on the floor of my bedroom, scratch marks, as if something had been watching me while I slept. Crow, you might think I'm crazy, but there's a layer of reality that most people will never see. They are not among us by chance. They are in control, and when they realize you've seen too much, they make you disappear. Two of my colleagues who were on the same mission were found dead in 2021. One was ruled an apparent suicide. The other, a heart attack. Both were young, strong, and healthy. And me, I went into hiding. I changed my identity, deactivated everything, but even so. Now and then I receive an envelope with no return address. Inside, a photo of me, sleeping, taken. From outside my window, Crow, they know I'm sharing this, and if something happens to me after this video, then you'll know I was telling the truth. They are here, and she still runs everything. O Crow, do you believe there are objects that hold time? Not memories, but entire moments, trapped within old things. I didn't believe it, until I inherited my great-aunt's mirror. She passed away alone in an old mansion filled with items that seemed to have come straight from a museum, and among dusty furniture and portraits with sad eyes. There it was, an oval mirror framed in dark wood, hand-carved. It looked expensive, yet neglected, and for some reason, I wanted to keep it. The first sign was subtle. Every time I walked by it, I saw my normal reflection, but the background wasn't. The room I was in, it was as though the mirror revealed another place, an old room, with a fireplace, red carpets, and someone sitting in the back, always in the shadows, never clear. I thought it was paranoia, an optical illusion, a distorted reflection, until I started recording with my phone, and the video showed the same thing, same angle, same figure, even when behind me there was just a wall. Crow, I began to have dreams about that room in the dream. I walked up to the mirror and passed through it. On the other side, everything was silent, but I felt that the man in the shadows was watching me. On the third night, he spoke to me, and it wasn't a dream. You can see me, because I am reminding you. That's what he said. I started to investigate. I found out the mirror came from Europe in the 19th century. It belonged to a family that vanished mysteriously. No one was ever found. Only the mirror remained. And an old letter written by the matriarch. This mirror does not show the present. It reveals what has yet to happen, but will happen again. The next day, I broke the mirror, but it didn't help. The reflection persisted. Even in the cracked glass, I saw the room, and now the man in the shadows was standing and walking towards the mirror. Crow, 4 days ago, I woke up with blood on my hand. It wasn't mine. The mirror was on the floor, without a frame, and written on the glass, in red letters, "Now it's your turn to stay." Since then, I no longer have a reflection, not in the bathroom mirror, not on my phone screen, not in puddles of water, nothing. So tell me, Crow, if you saw me right now, face to face, what would you see in my place? Buddy, have you ever felt like you were driving through a place that just doesn't want you to leave? It was supposed to be a straightforward trip, a nighttime freight run through the back roads of Goiás, with winding roads cutting through hills and brush. I picked up the truck at 9 p.m., making sure everything was in order, full tank, lights working, GPS on. But at some point, the road betrayed me. It was around 1 a.m. when I realized I was going in circles, even though I wasn't making any U-turns, even with the GPS claiming I was going straight. The same points kept appearing. That's when I noticed the loop. An abandoned bus on the roadside, a black dog standing at the shoulder, and a wooden post with a white cross planted beside it. My heart raced. On the third pass, I stopped, got out of the truck, looked around. Absolute silence, but the dog was still there. This time it looked at me, but its eyes were red, like embers. I rushed back to the truck without turning my back on the dog, managed to get inside, tried to reverse, turn on the radio, anything. But the truck wouldn't respond. The key turned, but the engine made no sound. And then, my friends, I saw it. In the rearview mirror, there was someone sitting in the passenger seat, a woman, dressed in white, hair wet, covering her face. She didn't say a word, just shivered, as if she were cold or scared. When I turned around quickly to look directly, no one was there, but the seat was wet. I panicked. Crow, the road made. We go around 6 times. 6. On the 7th time, the white cross that was always beside the post had a name. I jumped out to see what had changed on the cross. That's when I saw my name. Yes, my name. And the date was for the following day. That's when I heard a voice on the radio, but the radio was off. Still, the static began to speak. Turn back before the road accepts you. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and did as it instructed. I shifted into reverse, drove back for nearly 2 kilometers, praying out loud, and suddenly a bright light, and everything went dark. I woke up on the shoulder of the road, bright daylight, flat tire, empty truck. The cargo, it was all in the back. But the invoice had a different date, 2 days later. And since then, whenever I pass an empty road, the cross reappears with different names and dates that haven't arrived yet. Crow, there are paths that aren't just roads, they're traps. And there's something in the darkness that waits for us to enter again. Crow, I was an altar boy for 10 years. I served at Mass, took care of the chapel, and swept every corner of the church as if it were my own home. But there was one thing, a tradition, that I never really understood. And when I finally did, it was too late. Every year when Lent began, the priest would give me the same instruction. Cover all the images, my child, until Good Friday. And I complied. I draped purple cloths over all the saints, the crucifix, even the side altar. But something about that practice always bothered me. It felt like the church became colder, darker. Even with the candles lit, the shadows seemed to grow between the pews. And sometimes, when I was alone, I would hear someone whispering in Latin, but when I turned around, there was no one there. Crow. During the last Lent I served, I made a mistake. On the eve of Good Friday, I went to the sacristy in the early hours. I had forgotten a rosary on the altar, and as I passed by the statue of Saint Michael the Archangel, I saw that the cloth had fallen. But the strange thing was that the statue looked different. Its eyes were open, for real, not stone. The sword seemed stained with rust, and I swear I heard it breathe. I approached and touched the base of the statue. At that instant, the main candle in the nave extinguished on its own. And behind me, a deep voice, one that wasn't the priest's, spoke. You looked when you should have believed. I turned around in fear, but there was no one there. However, when I looked back at the altar, all the covered images were now facing me. Even covered, I could feel their eyes, as if the cloth hid nothing anymore, as if they all knew Crow. That very night I had a dream. I saw the church empty and the saints, one by one, coming down from the altars, faceless, walking towards me with outstretched hands, as if demanding something from me. When I woke up, my room was filled with white feathers, and the wooden cross I wore around my neck was burned on the back, as if something had touched it. Since then, I've never entered a church alone again. But every year during Lent, I dream of that night, and I hear very close to my ear the same phrase, they don't want to be seen when they bleed. Crow, I'm a computer technician, obsessed with smartphones, technology, and figuring out how things work. I didn't believe in ghosts, or I didn't used to, because what happened to me wasn't a bug. It wasn't a virus. It was something else entirely. It all began with a call, an unfamiliar number, no area code, just 7 digits. I picked up out of curiosity. Silence. I thought it was a prank, but deep down there was a sound, like someone breathing very slowly. In an empty room, I hung up. 2 minutes later, the same number called again. But this time, I wasn't the one who answered. My phone picked up on its own. Crow, I was staring at the screen when it happened without touching it. No movement at all. The display lit up and the call came through. Then a voice said my name, my full name. I froze. I hung up. I checked the number, and there was no record of the call. None. Not in my call history. Not with the carrier. It was as if it had never happened. The next night, the videos started. My personal videos from my phone, they all looked different. A detail here, a noise there. But then I noticed in every video, in the background, there was someone standing watching me. First in the corner of the room, then behind the door, even in the reflection of the TV screen. Crow, I'd live alone. I thought someone had hacked my phone. I took it to technicians. They formatted it, replaced the SIM card, but nothing worked. The front camera would turn on by itself. It recorded during the night and showed me sleeping with something next to me. It was disturbing. On the last night, I woke up to the sound of my phone vibrating. It was shaking on top of the dresser. The screen was completely black, but in the center, a phrase flashed. "Who told you you're alone?" I threw my phone on the floor, but it wouldn't stop. The screen stayed lit, and from the camera came a sound. Not a voice, a wail. Like someone trapped inside the device. So, I went to the carrier to change my number and phone, and I searched online about that number. That's when I discovered that number belonged to a woman who died in 2003. She was murdered and her body was never found, but in the investigation, it was noted that the last record on her phone was a video where she appears looking into the camera and says, "If you're seeing this, it's because he still keeps me here." Since then, I've stopped using my phone. But sometimes, when I'm near someone, their phone vibrates. No number, no call, just a black screen. Some things you witness, and you're never the same again. Things that aren't meant for everyone to see, but I saw them, and now I need to tell someone, even if it's just you. It all happened during Holy Week. In the countryside of Minas, my grandmother passed away, so I went there to help with the funeral. It's a small town, one of those places where time stands still, you know. I arrived on a Sunday night. The Mass was already over, but the town felt different, far too silent. No one was on the streets, not a light in the windows, just a thin fog creeping along the ground, as if the whole world was holding its breath. Stayed at my aunt's house. She looked at me strangely and didn't say much. She just told me, "Stay inside until it passes." I asked, "Passes what?" She didn't answer, just locked the door. With 2 bolts and a cross made of dry twigs. At midnight, I heard the bells. Crow. I swear, the bells weren't coming from the church. They were coming from the road. I got up and went to the window. That's when I saw it. A procession, but it wasn't like any I had ever seen before. Everyone was dressed in white, with veils covering their faces, walking slowly, without singing, without looking around, and in the center there was an enormous figure, taller than any person I'd ever seen, its face hidden by a mask made of flesh. carrying a float with something that looked like a cross that seemed to pulse as if it were alive, and behind it were children, but they had no eyes. Crow. They passed in front of the house, and one of the veils turned to look at me. There was no face, and yet it smiled. The door's bolt began to creak, as if something was trying to get in, slowly, in no hurry, just to see if I would let it. I stood there, frozen, until everything disappeared. No sound, no traces, just silence. The next morning, nobody in town spoke about it, but when I went to the cemetery to check on my grandmother's grave, there was something new there, a plaque. No name, no dates, just these words: "The next procession will come for those who looked." Since then, Crow, I've never been the same, because I saw it. And ever since that night, I hear bells every time I try to sleep. Closer, louder, more hungry.
If you've made it this far, maybe you're not the same anymore, because those who listen carry something with them. 7 accounts, 7 doors opened, and now one question hangs in the air. Did you hear the bells too? Or is it only those who have been marked that can hear them? If something odd happens to you tonight, if your phone vibrates, if you hear footsteps outside, or if someone covers the mirrors in your home for no reason, remember, you're not alone. You just witnessed what you weren't meant to see. But if you want to hear more, there are other stories waiting for you. Subscribe to hit that notification bell, and let us know in the comments, which of these 7 do you think was real? Or maybe all of them are.